The Reverend Myles Andrew Julius Rhynes once said about his life as a poet, "It's a lonely and discouraging life." Described as hindered by a vocal handicap from taking a full-time career path in the ministry, Rhynes still found many ways to earn a living. He was a minister, a poet, a public school teacher, a clothing salesman, and a librarian. Hello, this is Brian Brown with the Gaston County Public Library, and I want to introduce you to another librarian from Gaston County's past, Myles Andrew Julius Rhynes. The son of Dave Rhynes and Margarette Costner, Rhynes was born in Dallas, North Carolina on October 22, 1885. He began writing poetry before he received his theological training at Shaw University, Raleigh, and spending one term as a student at Fayetteville State Teachers College. At age 19, he taught for 1 year as a rural school teacher in Clover, South Carolina. After moving north, Reverend Rhynes published a collection of poetry in 1914 titled The Echoes of a Traveler's Dream, which he dedicated to his mother, Margarette L. Rhynes. While in Washington, D.C., he served as a minister of Mount Carmel Baptist Church under the Reverend William Henry Jernigan in 1918. Rhynes found creative ways to copyright his poems, such as this 1916 broadside from the collection of Brown University Library. He printed this poem, The Prince of Ethiopia, about Booker T. Washington, on 12x4 ribbons of silk cloth, which he could then sell for 25 cents each. 3 of his other poems, including The Voice of Ethiopia and Uncle Sam's Battle Cry, were arranged to music. Rhynes' 1920 poem, titled My Lord, Take Me Home, would be set to music by Francis A. Clark, black musician and composer from Philadelphia. 3 years later, a performance of this spiritual by the Boston AME Zion Choir was broadcast on Boston radio station WNAC. Rhynes wrote a letter to scholar and civil rights pioneer W.E.B. Du Bois in 1926, requesting contact information for composers that could arrange music to Rhynes' poems. Du Bois responded to this letter, and copies of both letters are held in the archives of the University of Massachusetts Amherst Libraries. Myles Rhynes would return to his birthplace of Gaston County in 1931. There he assisted the pastor Ezekiel W. Burke of the Tabernacle Baptist Church. Then later he volunteered as a library director for the Gastonia Community Center, located at 725 North Fall Street. The library's bookmobile service started at this time for the African American community, with the establishment of 5 book stations. The Reverend Rhynes was in charge of the newly inaugurated station at the Fall Street location. The county library's bookmobile made its first stop of the year at the Fall Street Community Center Library on Friday, October 6, 1939. 141 books were left for school children and adults to check out, as well as to read inside the center's library. Myles Rhynes moved to Fayetteville, where he broadcast a weekly radio program Saturday mornings in June of 1948. His radio broadcast covered subjects including biblical and Christian poetry. Featured in the Fayetteville Personalities section of the Carolinian of July 17, 1948, Myles Rhynes summarized the sacrifices he made, devoting himself to a lifetime of writing poetry. Believe it or not, it's not the pros nor the cons of life that concern me most, for mine have chosen and prefer writing poetry for my hobby instead of courtship or matrimony. In fact, the chief concern of my whole being has been to learn more about God, nature, and the finer things of life. Notwithstanding, I am handicapped in more than one way, like most struggling writers. At the same time, beating against the tide for the want of a soulmate, albeit the climax of my ambition in the literary world has never been reached. However, I can say, thank God for the art that sets the lever of my thoughts in action to write verse out of the red blood of my heart's mind as I dip my pen in the fountain of hope.